Okay. And I'm just double checking, you heard that, right?
Yes, I heard that.
Yes,
Perfect.
we did.
We are live, and I'll turn this off at the beginning.
Hi, everybody. This is Karina Homme. Welcome to our first all virtual Azure Government Meetup. Of course, I think everyone's hunkering down in their home offices because of the coronavirus. And it was really important for us to continue delivering this content to everyone while we're all practicing some safe social distancing. So hopefully you're all nice and cozy at your home office and you can enjoy the content that we're delivering tonight. As I start off all the time, I want to thank our presenters for sharing all their best practices and knowledge of what we're doing in government today and government cloud and on Azure. So with that, let me introduce myself. My name is Karina Homme. I'm the founder of our Azure Gov Meetup, also at Microsoft Azure Government Engineering Team, and very happy to welcome everybody tonight. Vishwas Leigh, I'm not sure if he could join us tonight, but he's also a co-founder, very knowledgeable. He's an MVP in Microsoft Azure. So that means he knows everything Azure. So definitely reach out to either of us if you have questions or want to volunteer. So why are we here? We always like to start off our meetups. Typically we're all at downtown DC at 1776, but tonight I'm glad we could meet each other virtually. And we're here really to create a community of practitioners and as I mentioned before, share best practices and learnings, case studies, and really be able to create that dialogue with one another. So with that, we're gonna have some very cool demos. We have 4 tonight. And if you have questions, please pop them up in the IM window and we'll address them as we're going or at the end of each presentation. So please, we'd love that engagement from you. And then please help us grow the community. If you like to tweet, our hashtag is #AzureGovMeetup. And again, we're always seeking those volunteers. So if you have a great idea or best practice, please don't hesitate to share them with us. So for the time being, our meetups will be virtual until told otherwise. So our next meetup is April 29th. We're already putting that agenda together. It's on government modernization, IT modernization with cloud. So if you have any great speaker ideas or would like to present yourself, please send me an email. It's at khomme@microsoft.com. So don't be shy, RSVP to that meetup. We'll send out a virtual link and join each other in our next meetup. So with that, we'd like to always give kind of updates on what's going on. Microsoft Build, which was May 19th to 21st, is now, they announced that will be virtual. So just like this meetup, you'll be able to attend and get the latest and greatest live from all the speakers and presenters. So don't check that out. And also, if you haven't checked our blog recently, we've done a lot on Azure Government Platform. We've had 21 new services in FedRAMP High. So that's 101 total. We're excited as part of the Azure Government Engineering Team to have released 29 new services. But at the end of March, don't be surprised if you see those numbers creeping up over 40. We're really working hard at giving everybody that commercial innovation in government cloud so that there really is parity between all our clouds at any data classification. So check out our blog, also the Azure blog, and there's Azure updates if you're really just looking for those service updates. So with that, let's go right into the agenda. As I said, we have 4 amazing speakers tonight, and we're going to get into demos. Each speaker will have about 20 minutes. Please don't hesitate to send in your questions, and we get going. So with that, here are our speakers. We have TJ from Microsoft. He knows about anything and everything that has to do with security. Love working with him. And then Eric and Sean from TechTrend. They have a great presentation on DevSecOps. And then Christian, he'll follow up on a cool demo around drones. And then we'll circle back to Toby and end with another really cool demo around bots. So with that, I think we'll have a lot to kind of discuss and digest, and we'll kind of take you around all possibilities of solution. So with that, we're going to talk about zero trust with TJ. TJ, it's all you.
Thank you, Karina. I'm TJ Banasik. I'm a senior program manager with Microsoft in the Azure Government and Engineering Group. In this session, we'll be exploring zero trust and how we can secure identity within Microsoft Azure. The first question is, what does it mean to us? What do we want to learn and take away from this topic? To put it bluntly, the reason we're talking about zero trust is because the on-premise defense in depth model has really failed. In 2010, Forrester produced a white paper, which is the foundation of what zero trust is today. John Kinderwack was one of the authors, and he described it best by saying that the defense in depth model is similar to an M&M, to where we did everything possible to harden our perimeter, keep the threats on the outside and our business on the inside. And if we could just maintain that hard shell, the attackers wouldn't get into the GUI center. And we know that the average attacker will compromise credentials readily with phishing. They will, within 1 to 2 hours of compromising those credentials, use them. Within 24 hours, they will circumvent a VPN. And within 2 to 3 days, a capable attacker will own domain access rights to your entire environment. As cyber defenders, it takes us an average of 144 days to detect that threat. So obviously we need to think about doing things differently. We need to think about, instead of our users being constrained within an on-premise perimeter-based environment, to being more than our users, to being our partners, our suppliers, our vendors, and using more than just our gold images, using BYOD devices, IoT, personal devices, mobile devices, and not just connecting from within our office, but connecting all over the globe where we do business. And this is where the zero trust model really brings benefit and utility to what we're doing in cybersecurity. The first thing I want to do is cut through the hype by talking about what zero trust is not, an easy foundation to get started with. So if any of you went to RSA this year, you would see every booth in security talking about how this product or that product is zero trust, and it becomes really confusing. What does that mean? And I like to give the example of being on a battlefield. If I'm on a battlefield and I'm fighting the enemy, anything could be of help in doing that. So if there's a hammer on the ground, like I could pick it up, would it be any good? Like maybe it couldn't hurt. Maybe there's a shield. Like, do I want to fight with that? Probably not my first choice. I can't wield the thing like Captain America, but okay, everything helps. And that's kind of a similar approach with zero trust. And it leads to a lot of hype and a lot of misunderstanding as far as what zero trust is. So we know what it's not. It's not literal. You can't sit there and run a business or an enterprise by saying, The truth is out there, trust no one. No one's accessing my environment. You'll never touch it. I'm just going to disable right click, the keyboard and everything, and then I'll be completely secure. And as much as security professionals think that'll solve the problem, it isn't feasible in a business environment. So it's not a literal application. We do need to make trust. It's not an adjective. So there isn't a point on your zero trust journey to where your CISO is going to march in, throw out zero trust t-shirts. We're all going to high five each other and say, hey, we made it. It's a journey. It's not a description of a state. This is very unfortunate. We can't go out and buy it. There isn't a single tool that we can go and buy and say, oh, I've got my firewall, I've got my endpoint, I've got my SIM. Let me go ahead and throw a zero trust in there. Fortunately, that's not the way it works. We can't just buy it and apply it within our environment. It's not instant. Like, wait a minute, you're saying it's not instant? All right, too hard, I quit. We know we can't boil the ocean. We need to make incremental steps based in best practice and proven methodologies. And it's not a revolution. You don't need to go throw away all the investments you've made. We all live in hybrid and multi-cloud environments with distributed investments in security technologies. And what you'll find is a lot of the foundations of zero trust are based in best practice. And we'll talk about that in our compliance. But the takeaway from that is start with what you have as a foundation and build upon it. You don't need to restart or not leverage the controls and the investments that you've already made. So what are our principles of zero trust? At Microsoft, we produced a zero trust model, which you guys can find on the website. But the three major takeaways are it's a mindset. You need to think about operating in a pervasive risk environment. So within that environment, every request for resources or access is verified explicitly through different authentication methods. We don't want the attacker to breach our perimeter and then have the freedom to move within our environment. We want multiple explicit verifications in that path to trust. We want to use least privilege access, and security professionals will harp on this again and again. But we need to think about applying role-based access control and getting very granular in that. We don't need to give out blanket administrative rights. What type of administrator are you? Are you an application administrator, a security administrator, a data administrator? We can finally tune those to exactly what the role is and better control what that elevated privilege should be in accessing our environment. And we should think about not just granting that as a blanket end-all be-all, but maybe just granting it for use cases such as I only need my administrative functions when I'm working on my application. So maybe give me those features within my change window, log them then, and then revoke them at the end of that. And we'll talk about that with just-in-time access. And lastly, and most importantly, assume breach. The mindset that we're going to harden that perimeter with as many network appliances as we can have and consider ourselves safe with those investments. We've moved beyond that mindset. So we need to think about containing breach. We need to think about when the attacker breaches our perimeter, what control are they going to hit next? How far are they going to be able to go? So assuming breach and operating in a risk pervasive environment. So what does that mean to us in the federal cloud community? We need to think about how we can align zero trust based on federal standards. Right now, there currently is not an audit framework to do this. So we need to build on the available documentation and compliance frameworks that we have. The first is NIST 800 SP, NIST SP 800-207. This is very recently published by NIST, and it outlines a zero trust architecture. So this document provides an outstanding framework for what type of architecture you need for policy enforcement points, security concerns, and the type of architecture you need to build to be able to enable this type of a model. Secondly, we have trusted internet connections, which has been around for some time via a DHS and CISA and an OMB collaboration. Trusted internet connections, being that it has maturity and widespread use in the federal government, is a great standard because it's very granular as far as what type of controls need to be applied for a zero trust type environment. There's also a lot of other great resources out there like continuous diagnostic monitoring and the NIST cybersecurity framework. So in Azure Government, we recently released a 6-part blog series covering how to implement zero trust with Microsoft Azure. And within the series, we focused on 6 major focal points: secure and identity, cloud workload protection, SIM, policy, insider threat, and supply chain risk management. So within each of these blogs, and I'll provide links for you guys at the end, we start off with talking about how do we align what we know in these compliance frameworks, where the commonality is, and looking at how we apply that with a Microsoft implementation, and then rolling down into quick steps for how you can implement these in your environment. Tonight, we're exploring 12 steps to implementing Zero Trust for identity management principles. So what we've created with each of these blogs is a step-by-step guide for initial and starting points that you can deploy in your environment to move towards this Zero Trust model on your journey for digital transformation. In the demo, what I'd like to do is talk about a few of those steps and show you how you can do this stuff within Azure. So let me go ahead and flip over to my environment. So the first step we want to do is an employee and identity management system. Within Azure, it is the Azure Active Directory offering. So several ways to get there. When you come into Azure, you could click on the icon, you could search it up in the bar over here, or go down to the blade and select Active Directory. So when we come into the overview, we can see that we have our identity management platform. We need to evaluate what type of trust relationships that we have applied and what type of organizational relationships that we have in place. So the nice thing is we can go to Azure AD Connect and think about the schema that we want for Active Directory. A lot of us have hybrid environments. There is not a one-size-fits-all, so we have a very flexible model. We can look at federating our user sign-ins. We can look at SSO, pass-through authentication, or maybe trusting within organizational relationships. You can see in here, we could go down and configure identity providers and look at SAML, WSFed, and other federated approaches to identity management. What I want to show for this use case is how we would create a user, give them administrator rights, and start to control that within our Zero Trust principles, looking at conditional access, multi-factor authentication, privileged identity management, access, and things of that nature. So we'll start off within AAD. You saw that I clicked on users. We're now on all users. I'll go to create a new user. Give that a moment to load up. There we go. I'm not going to create a user named Corona tonight. This user is going to be John Doe. We've got our fictitious domain right here, first up, consultant 787, and that's where we're going to be creating this user. I'm going to auto-generate a one-time password so I can share that with John Doe. And if I want to put in more metadata as far as possibly blocking a sign-in until it's ready for provisioning, or maybe putting metadata in the gal, I could do that here. So I'm going to create that user, and you see that John Doe is now created. Next, what I want to do is grant administrative rights to John. So I'll select the user. It'll bring me into a profile with some of the configuration settings that I can make for John. And first thing I want to do is go to assigned roles. Add assignments. And we know that John is an administrator, but when we're providing this access, we feel that's too broad. We want to talk about that role-based access control from our Zero Trust application. So what we're going to do is tailor it down to John's specific role. So we have about 100 built-in RBAC roles in here, or if that isn't enough, you can custom create it. But the nice thing about this is you have the freedom to do that. So for John, he's going to be an application administrator, and we will add that role. So it's popped up. Next, we want to control how that access is made with MFA and conditional access. So I'll go back to my Azure Active Directory blade. Now there's a few ways that I can apply this. I like to roll down here to security and click it here. I could also go from the users blade and select MFA. Security is nicer. It's got a little bit more full-featured look at things, and it allows me to apply conditional access and policy. So that's why we're going in through this method. So within security, I'll select conditional access. And we want to create a new policy. We're going to call this is MFA for administrators. We're going to apply this to John. So to do that, we would go to select users, click on user. And select. And there's John. Now here I could go into clouds or applications, or I could possibly just apply it to all. Oh. There we go. Another nice thing is we can go down into conditions and select some of the conditions that we want. There's different things that we can apply within conditional access. We can talk about how to configure sign-in risks. So if the device comes in at medium, high risk, apply that policy then. If it's low risk, say from a trusted location with a trusted image and time of day, maybe then we wouldn't apply it. We can talk about which device platforms we want to apply this to. Maybe I only want John Doe working on a Windows machine, so we could configure that. Locations could be trusted IPs within my organization, or maybe by geolocation. Client applications, a method of the client that you're going to access that environment from, and device state. So is it a healthy device? Is it non-healthy? It's similar to NAC policies. Then we want to go to granting access control. So this is where we're going to set the policy to grant access upon MFA. I can also add a few more to those conditional access. I can say that I also want that device to be marked compliant. Maybe I want it coming from a hybrid environment on an approved app with an app protection policy. And I can say, do I want all of those or do I want just one of those? For this one, we'll say I want all of them. Enable the policy, yes, and create. Validation successful. Now we can see that our policy is in place. The next step in our Zero Trust application is looking at controlling access. This is a very hard thing to do in the environment, to determine exactly what users have what privilege level and how do we police that. So several ways to do this. Easiest I'd say is go to user. Say you want to drill down just on John Doe and figure out what type of roles and access that he has. So we'll go back to our user blade and click on John Doe and then select assigned roles. And we can see that we've assigned John as application administrator. Now, the nice thing is when you move to a fuller featured offering of Azure Active Directory, like the Premium P2, you start to get a lot more of the bells and whistles. And these things are very applicable to what we're doing in Zero Trust, especially a feature called Privileged Identity Management. Now, this is a way to monitor administrative access, apply it time-bound, IP-bound, access-bound, and then audit and alert on this. So fantastic feature, and I'll show you guys how we do that. So a few places we can get to it. I'm going to go to identity governance. So some of these features that I have, I can create an access package. Look at access reviews. This is very good if you need to review multiple administrators or do a bulk export or possibly align that with a configuration management platform like Azure Security Center, or maybe even a SecOps platform like our SIEM, Azure Sentinel. And we have our privileged identity management blade. So I'm going to go into that one and manage role assignments. So what I want to do for this, for Zero Trust, is to manage access. Say that giving John Doe blanket access to application administrator isn't the way to go. I want to get more granular and provide the absolute least privilege access to this environment. I'm going to add a member. That's going to be John. We're going to give him scope of the entire directory for now as an example. Really, this use case would work a lot better if I'm the change officer during a change window. I could give John Doe as an app administrator access to just his resources. So we're going to say that he would be an app administrator just within the scope that we're applying. All right, select a member. There's John. In membership settings, most important. So pretty cool as far as what we can do here for the feature. So we can say that maybe this is where we want to assign an administrator. We can make him permanently eligible, meaning when I assign him admin rights here, similar to the other blade with an AA to users, he would be permanently eligible. But the great thing about this is I can make it active, non-permanently assigned, or I can make it eligible. When it's eligible for John to use these rights, he would have to ask me for permission, and I as a global admin would grant it. So let's say that my change window is tonight, and that's when John's going to be making his maintenance changes on his application. So we're going to say that these rights are only eligible between 8 and 10 p.m. tonight. I certainly don't want to provide those rights for an entire year, so let me go ahead and back that one up. There we go. So what this means when I grant this is John will only have application administrator rights within that time window when I approve it as being eligible. At the completion of that window, it will blow away those rights, and John would return to the normal user rights that he had. And that's in place. So last thing I wanted to show you guys is just looking at an audit, and that's another thing within identity management is how do we review activity within our environment. So the nice thing is when you roll down the AAD blade to sign-ins and audit logs, we've got quite a few capabilities. We can look at the logs organically within our query language, which is the Custo query language, KQL. I can get a heads-up display of what sign-ins I've had within my environment. I can go to audit logs if I need to look at a specific user. I can go into insights to make determinations on what's going on with my environment, maybe look at resource utilization or admin utilization. If someone isn't using their admin a lot, it would give me a recommendation to say, hey, maybe you should revoke that admin, or maybe they're overly permissive in rules. Or I can go to workbooks. I can create heads-up dashboards. I can do playbook automation and integrate with a lot of those other Azure security capabilities like ASC and Sentinel. So that completes our demo portion. I'll roll back to the slides. So I want to close out with this final point. Zero Trust is a journey, just like digital transformation. And when you look at these folks navigating the boat, you wouldn't want to be out in this type of weather flying a kite because there's 30-mile-an-hour winds and it would surely blow away. But they're navigating successfully with their sailboat. If you look over there and you see the rocks, you wouldn't want to go over there and crash on the rocks because it would surely sink your boat, but they're doing so successfully. And if you look at the water, you certainly wouldn't want to go swimming. It's 40 degrees and you get hypothermia and drown, but they're doing so successfully. So this is a journey with Zero Trust. We need to learn to operate within a risk-pervasive environment. And if you follow the steps and principles, you too can be successful in your journey. So bon voyage. And I'd like to close out with a reference to our 6-part blog series. You guys can find that on the Azure Government blog. I believe we're working on publishing an ebook, rolling these together as well. Got a few links in there, and I believe we'll make the slides available. And I'd like to open it up for a few questions before we transition to the next demo.
I think everyone's a little shy tonight.
I guess so.
Yeah, I think it might be the social distancing. Any questions? Anybody? Yes. I think with that, I'll let people think about it. We still will take questions at the end. Thank you, TJ, for that. I think it was really helpful for a lot of us. So the next demo we have tonight is from Eric and Sean from TechTrend. We're going to dive into DevSecOps-as-a-Service and cloud cost optimization.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Carlson, and with me virtually this evening is Sean Gezen. And together, we both work at TechTrend, and we're going to be presenting Accelerating Smart Cloud Adoption Across Government. So I know that's a really long title with everything, but really what we're going to be talking a little bit about this evening is our journey as a company and so 2 tools that we've actually developed that have helped with the adoption of cloud services across the government. So one of them is going to be focused on DevSecOps, and the other one is going to be a portal that we have developed to help to manage resources as well as costs within the Azure environment itself. So before I kind of jump into the 2 tools that we just talked about, I wanted to just provide a little bit of background on TechTrend to help to provide some guidance of, how do we get to this point as a company and actually develop these products that are helping us in the real world. So TechTrend, going back in history, been around for about 15 years. We're initially focused on 2 sides of it. There was part of it on the VAR side of the business, so that's the value-added reseller. That's selling hardware, software, that types of products. So again, we've been working with Microsoft for many, many years. And then the other half of the company was focused on your traditional government contracting roles, such as application development, security, PMO support, and so on and so forth. So what we've seen over the last number of years is when cloud became the big thing, again, this has been going on for probably 5 or 10 years at this point that we've been involved. We saw those 2 worlds colliding, and as a company, we made the complete switch to focus everything on our company around cloud. So that where we landed today is on kind of 4 pillars as a company. We have cloud migration, application modernization, managed cloud hosting, and DevSecOps. So what we've realized as a company is that, well, initially the government was pretty, it's pretty slow on adopting the cloud stuff. They started with infrastructure as a service, data center consolidation around that side of the world. They've since evolved to this point where now they're getting much and much more sophisticated with what they need as far as their cloud products. So the problem that we were experiencing was that while our developers could utilize the cloud environment for the development and things like that, it was still taking a very long time to actually get those applications deployed out into the real world. Myself, I manage a lot of our development teams that we work with the government, and what was happening was, for example, we might have a bug that takes literally an hour, maybe a day at max to go ahead and fix, but it would take a minimum of 2 weeks to get that into the actual operational environment because there's lots of different checks that had to happen. Obviously, all for good reason. There were security checks, 508 compliance, architecture reviews, so on and so forth, and all that was just taking a long time to do. So as a result for that, we developed what we call Federal GovCloud DevSecOps. Obviously, there's a number of DevOps solutions and DevSecOps solutions out there. I'll say a couple of things that make our solution unique, and Sean will be demoing this here in just a few minutes, is the fact that our solution was built entirely with the government in mind. So that's not to say you can't use this outside of the government, but everything we've done is for compliance with government policies, practices, and again, just that real world experience that I've gone over here a few minutes ago. Our product is FedRAMP compliant, so we do hope that, if agencies go ahead and adopt it, obviously they still need to go through their own agency ATO, but by being on the FedRAMP marketplace, it helps to accelerate that process and hopefully get an ATO a lot quicker and getting your teams really able to utilize it. And the other one that we're going to be demoing this afternoon is called Optimized Cloud IT. And this is a product that is used actually both by the technical and the non-technical sides of the world. And as you'll see, it's a product that makes it so you can quickly and easily see your how you're using your resources, both from Azure consumption side of things as well as your cost side of things within your Azure portal. All these products together, again, I think have really had real impact on the agencies that we work with on helping to accelerate the cloud adoption, and hopefully you'll see that as we go through the presentation today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean, who will actually go through our DevSecOps briefing. And again, if you have any questions, I know we're going to be pretty close for time today, but feel free to ask them. We'll try to get as many through them in the chat actually while he's presenting this afternoon. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, everyone. So what I would like to present to you today is our TechTrend FedGovCloud DevSecOps solution. And as Eric mentioned briefly, this solution set was built from the ground up to be compliant with government regulations. It is the first FedRAMP ready at a moderate level DevSecOps integrated pipeline available on the FedRAMP marketplace at this stage. We have worked very closely with our government partners to design this to not only be secure end to end, but to also be flexible to adopt additional third-party tool sets, allow additional configuration with third-party repositories, and to be able to deploy to Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, or even on-premise. So what we're going to go through today is a very simple integrated pipeline, which is provisioned as a pipeline as code to provide an immutable and enforceable pipeline for the development community. It will go through the source code management, which is being delivered through a integrated version of GitHub Enterprise as managed within that environment. Then security scanning and 508 testing provided by SonarQube and Lighthouse. We have continuous integration and continuous deployment, providing configuration management and infrastructure as code, which again provides immutable infrastructure and immutable configuration management for managed cloud services. And then finally, we'll deploy and monitor from within the tool. So let me go ahead and switch over now to the live demo, and I can go through it. So what we're going to be showing today is management of this site, which happens to be our DevSecOps knowledge base. And this is currently being deployed to 2 different environments, both provisioned within Azure. So this is going to be environment 1, which is the test slot in Azure Web Services. And then we have a production slot, again, in Azure Web Services. And both of them have been provisioned to a hardened state, including attaching certificates and URLs as well. So this is ready for us to go ahead and, as a government developer, make our code changes to this, and then we'll go ahead and show you what happens once we go ahead and make our quick code change. So here's the actual code of the site. And we're going to go ahead and make a quick code change as a government developer. And we're going to go ahead and customize this for today's meetup. So if I go ahead and save my code change, and then open up my GitHub client, it will go ahead and pick up that code change that I found, that I just made, and I'll say update for Demopalooza. And I'll go ahead and make that commit to the master, and this will go ahead and push it to the integrated version of GitHub Enterprise. Once that is done, the second this code is deployed to GitHub Enterprise, until it gets deployed to the cloud environments, it never leaves the single VNet. Everything is routable through internal peering and over the Azure backbone in the government cloud community, which ensures that data from point of entry into our solution to deployment to your cloud environment is protected end to end. So let's go ahead and switch over to the pipeline view. You can see here it picked up 13 seconds ago, the update for Demopalooza, and it's already going through the pipeline. So if I click on that, you can see it's currently in the security scanning phase. The first step of this is to build the application. So what happens is this pipeline will actually install all the tools that are required to build the application. So it'll install Maven, it'll provision all of the Terraform version that I need to deploy the architecture, and then it will go ahead and initiate the build. Once it's built, it'll then have a compiled binary, and it'll submit all of that to security scanning. The security scanning will ensure that the static code or the source code is free from new vulnerabilities. And if new vulnerabilities are introduced, it will fail the build and not allow any further development or any further deployment through this pipeline. And then finally, it does infrastructure deployment as code. So this will do a desired state analysis. So what it's doing is it's looking at the approved architecture for the code that's in place. And if the architecture is to that specification, it will do nothing. It will go ahead and deploy. If it's not, it will destroy the architecture that's currently there, and then it will go ahead and reprovision it into the trusted state. So this ensures that your application architecture is immutable from both your testing environment and your production environment. Then it will deploy to test, and then it will go ahead and do its further tests. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the security scanning that's here in place. So we have SonarQube provided here. So if I go and refresh this, we get the latest report. So SonarQube provides reliability, security, maintainability, coverage, and duplication scans of your code base. And it supports up to 23 languages in the current version that we're offering as part of our DevSecOps solution. You can also establish certain gates, like quality gates, including, for example, we have in R1 demo that if a new vulnerability here is introduced in a code change, it will fail the build and not allow it to progress. Additional customizable gates include things like reliability or maintainability and no new code smells or overall reduction of the debt, things like that. Coverage, test coverage, so if you want to enforce coverage on the code as it's being checked in, so to ensure that you have tests that validate all the new code that's being put in place, you can have those tests put in place and then those should pass, then therefore it would go through the gate. So let me go ahead and look at one of these reports real quick, and so you can see a little bit more of the details that's provided. Here under security hotspots, if I click on that, you can get a list of all of the information about what the security hotspots are being identified. So for example, these are all OWASP guidelines and CWEs within the JavaScript. So it's a bunch of regular expressions. So if I click on one of these, I will get the actual code, source code, decorated to show you where the problem is. And it'll give you the information on where the rule is, who made that commit to that change, and who should be assigned to fix this. If you click See Rule, you'll get all the documentation on that rule, including links to how to fix it and other potential follow-on vulnerabilities, and ways that you can address it as well. Additionally, this report is also available in the integrated GitHub environment. So when a developer pulls down the code to make their development branch, they will also see all of the reports inside the code itself, just like this, so they can address it as they're making their changes during their cycles, therefore reducing the technical debt and the vulnerabilities over time for legacy code systems. So let's go ahead and go back into the pipeline and we can go ahead and see what it's doing. So it went ahead and it pushed it to the test environment and it ran its 508 testing. So pretend for a moment I am now a government release manager. It's currently holding for release and it's waiting for an actual person to come in and say, yes, we can go ahead. And this includes role-based access controls. So we can assign people who have the authority to push this to production. So in my case, I would go ahead and assume the role of somebody who has the authority to push this production. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let me take a look at the functional test. So I'm going to go into the test environment and I'm going to refresh. So within Azure, we can now see, okay, look, it says now, welcome to Microsoft Meetup, Demopalooza 2020. It looks exactly how I want to. Nothing else was broken. All the links still work. So I'm okay functionally, this looks fine. But what about 508 compliance? Okay, well, I can now look at my 508 report. It's looking at that test environment and it's looking at performance, accessibility, best practices, search engine optimization. Performance is giving me a report on how long it takes to do to serve content, how long it takes to, and how we can potentially save time. So serving images in next-gen formats, I can save a second. If I reduce render blocking resources, I can save 2 seconds. Those are some of the performance things that I can do to improve my performance of my application. Now let's talk about 508 accessibility. So in 508 accessibility, I have a few failed audits here. So I have a background and foreground colors don't have sufficient contrast ratio. If I want to know exactly where I made that error or where I can fix that, if I click on this, I can drill down and see the actual code itself where it's failing. Another report here is, for example, the ID attributes on the page are not unique. Here's the ID element in question and that I have to go back and address. Things like our form elements don't have associated labels. Here's all the form elements that don't have associated labels. These are things that I can go back and fix and then improve this Lighthouse report score. So as a release manager, I might look at this and say, okay, well, there's nothing that would block me from pushing this to production. It's in the same state it was before. Go ahead and approve. So I can go ahead and click approve to production. And it'll go ahead and take the same binaries that were built at this stage and deploy it to production. Therefore, no changes to that code. That binary can occur because all the artifacts are being managed by the pipeline. Therefore, nothing can be introduced or changed without going through this entire pipeline again. So this will give about maybe 20 seconds. There we go. The application is deployed to pipeline, and then a notification is sent out to everybody that the job has successfully deployed. It attached the audit logs. It attached all the reports. And now I'm ready to go ahead and take a look at production. So if I look up the production environment and take a refresh, you can see it's now in the production slot, and now it's available online and anyone can go and view that. Also, we kind of mentioned a little bit briefly before that we do support multiple clouds. So I wanted to also show you here. This is actually an AWS image of that same site that we've been maintaining. And if I go ahead and click refresh here, you'll see that it's the Microsoft Meetup Demopalooza 2020. And it's the same changes in both environments. So as a developer, all I had to do is focus on my one code change, and then the pipeline would provision both cloud architectures for me and then deploy them to both architectures without any intervention from me in an automated fashion. So that's basically it from our perspective. So that's the very quick rundown of the TechTrend DevSecOps tool. Our usual presentation of this takes about an hour, so if you need a deeper dive, I'm sure we can accommodate that later. But let's switch gears now to Eric, and he's going to go over our optimized cloud IT tool.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sean. So hopefully everyone will be able to see that it makes it fairly obvious of how we can reduce what a deployment used to take, again, literally weeks, sometimes months, if you had to go ahead and actually inquire and get the servers and things like that set up, down to a matter of minutes to actually get a full site. So that was a pretty simple demo, but again, it works very similar if you're deploying an entire application or going out to something brand new into the environment as well. So the next one that we're going to jump into is our optimized cloud IT. While the last product we focused on was focused on supporting more of the IT, the developer side of the world, this tool is one that we found has been really useful for both the technical folks as well as the business side of things. So I know we're relatively short on time here, so I think Sean's going to jump right in here. There's two sides of the application on our optimized cloud IT product. One of the sides is the admin side, which unfortunately we're not going to have too much time to dive into today. But the other side is the view of what a customer would actually see from their side. So again, if you're a government user, a government customer, this is what you're going to actually see for kind of your pane of glass of what you're consuming with Azure resources. So as you can see here, there's a couple of things I wanted to point out on the actual screen itself. The first one is the fact you have this nice kind of bar chart, which makes it very clear of what resources you are consuming as a user. What we do is typically we sit down with our customers on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. Again, it kind of depends customer by customer basis, and look at this report. It provides a really quick and easy way to sit down with them and say, hey, you're spending a lot of money on, let's just take an example on backup. And they said, hey, I really, maybe I don't need backup. Maybe that's a whole lot of money that I'm spending that I would rather utilize my funding some other places. So it provides us a quick way to kind of get a visual perspective and redistribute items as necessary. We didn't actually do it on this specific view, but Sean, if you scroll up to the top there, we have our current consumption status. That's a really useful way if, for example, maybe you have like a firm fixed price contract with the government. And they say, okay, you get $10,000 to spend over the next 12 months. This provides a way that you can see your spending, and it's going to track it, and it's going to say, hey, this month you spent 20% of your budget. Your next month you spent 60% of your budget. Hey, I'm already at 80%. There's no way that I'm going to have enough funding to make it the entire year. I better take some action to go ahead and correct that. With everything. And obviously vice versa, a lot of times maybe they're really underspending and they can go ahead and utilize resources a little bit more efficiently and get more out of their Azure environment as well. If you scroll down a little bit, The other part here is what I like to call it kind of the number cruncher side of the world. So if you're really into numbers, you want to look what are the dollar values of everything that you're spending on. It provides a really detailed report of each part of your Azure subscription part by part that you can download. You are able to export this report to a CSV or a PDF file, which makes it a really nice and quick, really nice and easy way that, hey, if you want to send this to, for example, management to look at or something like that, it provides a comprehensive view of it. The last thing I wanted to point out in this world is that if you do have multiple subscriptions with your agency, so maybe you have Azure Government Cloud, Azure Commercial Cloud, all that can be viewed in one single pane of glass. So again, you don't have to go to 4 different places to view all that. It's going to consolidate it all together and make it so you can look at all your resources across the board and see everything and get a really quick view. On the other side of the world, if you're a CSP or a contractor out there, you can also manage lots of subscriptions in the same way that the government, looks at it as well. So again, it makes it really easy to see, what is their consumption? Where are we? Are we on pace with what we have agreed to as the government? So that concludes our 2 demos this afternoon. Hopefully everyone gained a little bit of insight of how we are working with the government and helping with these 2 tools to accelerate the cloud adoption, which at the end of the day, our main goal is to help the government, which hopefully helps the citizens to provide more quality services and get things out there for everyone to use. I will say that both of these products, while TechTrend obviously uses them with a lot of our customers, they are available. We do work with lots of other companies to go ahead and use them as well. So if you're a CSP, if you're a vendor out there and says, hey, these are great, I would love to use these with my customers, reach out to us and we'll be glad to provide you information of how you can utilize these tools. And vice versa on the government side as well. We'd be glad, obviously, to help you with your agencies because sometimes they like to have these directly on their side as well to help them with supporting their environment. So with that,
Eric and Sean, there were a couple of questions that came in during your presentation.
Okay.
I don't know if we could go through them. I think the first one is I think this is the DevSecOps tools. Is this the only for the web applications, or does the pipeline work with other apps as well?
So the pipeline works.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The pipeline works with both application services, so platform as a service, as well as IaaS. It can deploy to Kubernetes, Docker images. It can provision and manage basically any cloud environment or even on-premises environments as well. We work with customers to deploy to on-prem environments as well with it.
Nice. So Glenn asked, are agencies approving automation of Section 508 testing so that a person doesn't have to test release manually?
Yes, so that's what the pipeline really enforces. So what we're working with some of our government customers is to approve certain blockers and logic within the pipelines themselves, so that when a developer checks in the code, it's completely seamless to them. So it automates all of that testing for them, eliminating any manual steps and also ensuring that all the tests get conducted successfully. So if, for example, you have a worsening score on your 508, you can fail the build and say, hey, no, you added problems. You need to go back and fix them before we can approve this build.
I will just add on to that, Sean. I mean, I think it is a agency by agency basis.
Yes.
So of course that's an automated tool. Some agencies, they do still have a need to say, hey, I want to go in and look at the actual application. So again, I think that, as Sean showed earlier, you can also do the functional test as well in that view. And while he had a gate in place for this demo to say before releasing the application to production, we have a gate there, you can add other gates as well. And other tools within the agency. So again, if you have other tools in your agency and you say, hey, I have this security tool, I want to integrate it here, we can add those on as well.
Exactly. The data flows are described within our boundary to allow those to be integrated within a secure manner. And then also, since we are enabling pipeline as code, it enables us to completely be flexible with it. And so if you have one development group that uses a different set of technology stack or different tools, we can integrate with that individual developer community, that individual group, and enforce the same sort of code quality on them as well.
And we have a question, follow-up question. Did the pipeline, does it include system tests for example, UI test against real database?
So we don't, the pipeline itself currently doesn't have that. However, as part of our DevSecOps tool, we have add-on services. So for example, we can do application level monitoring and dynamic scanning of applications that are being deployed. And we do that through Tenable Nessus. The reason why we don't have that pipelined out is because it's a very resource intensive test that can potentially cause instability in production systems. So what we suggest people do is set up rules of engagement with us to test their applications, and then we would do those tests for them as part of our service offering, and then provide those reports for them. Other opportunities that we could potentially do would be to set up a test environment and then use our pipeline to test that environment, and then therefore maintain that security posture. And really the whole purpose of the DevSecOps tool from the beginning is to enforce the desired state and the immutable architecture so that you maintain continuous ATO of all managed systems.
That's really cool. And we have one last question around pricing, the pricing tool.
Sure.
What is the #1 insight that you've seen with your tool? So Elizabeth's looking for a story or on something that still upsets you to this day.
So when we originally saw with a lot of our customers, when they decided to make the initial journey to cloud, a lot of them said, hey, let's lift and shift all of our architecture over. And they went ahead and just provisioned everything out and moved everything over. And then they were hit with the first cloud bill. And it was like, wow, we're paying more for this than we were paying on-prem. And that initial sticker shock was a real wake-up call for them. And so what our tool will allow them to do is to evaluate the systems that they're currently having, and then it will provide them like feedback, like here's what you're really spending on these services. And then we can work with them to say, maybe here's some alternatives you can do, and then provide sort of apples to apples comparisons across different services, maybe moving from infrastructure as a service for their SQL services over to a platform as a service, for example, or moving away from infrastructure as a service to web app services or other PaaS services within Azure could be more cost beneficial. Looking at performances of VMs to say, hey, you're spending a lot on these VMs. Let's take a look at these VMs and see, are these really the ones that you need? Hey, they're only being operated at 12% efficiency the whole time. We could probably reduce them and save you some money there. So through that tool, we can identify where the biggest cost savings are and the cost drivers are for individual cloud architectures.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the great insights on both tool sets. With that, we'll move to our next speaker. So Christian, he's from Mobius Logic. He'll be talking about drone flight management system. Christian?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Karina, for inviting us to this event. My name is Christian Manasseh, and I'm the CEO of Mobius Logic. We are a Gold Microsoft software development partner based in Tysons, and we specialize in Azure cloud services, particularly in AI, data science, and robotics. This afternoon, I want to present you with our drone flight management system, which is available in the Azure app. It's available as an Azure app in the Azure Marketplace, and which will soon be made available to the Azure Cloud as well. We have a demo to show you today of the FMS system, but before that, I want to kind of share with you a few slides to give you a quick overview of the drone industry in general and the challenges that drone program directors face when setting up a drone operation. Then I'll showcase the core competencies of our FMS application and then show a demo with a couple of videos and then take some questions towards the end. So the 30,000-foot view of the drone industry is this. Starting 3 to 4 years ago, the FAA started relaxing several of the regulations related to commercial and civilian government agencies flying drones to conduct their business. This resulted in several industries to jump into and mobilize this technology. The construction industry and the civilian government industries are the leaders today, and most of those entities with over $100 million in operational budgets kind of spend a lot of money on drones. The drone usage in those industries have been doubling in the last 2 to 3 years. I don't want to bore you a lot with the numbers on the slide, which you can read later on, but a couple of things to point out here, that companies that use drones, close to 30% of them have 25 or more drones in their fleet. and about 100 or more people operating these drones, just to give you a size of an average size of a typical drone operation in these companies. So since this is a relatively new industry, the organizations that use drones have set up, or they're in the process of setting up, drone programs for or aviation service departments, if you want to call them, so that when you embark on this effort, you're going to handle drone operations, you're going to be faced with several challenges. What I list here are the top 4 challenging aspects of setting up a drone ops department. First, regulations are evolving, so you have to keep track of what is allowed and what is not. And these regulations vary also by jurisdiction. So you have federal regulations provided by the FAA, and then you have varying regulations at the state level, the county level, and sometimes at the city level. So a drone ops leader has to keep track of all those to ensure their organization is compliant. Second, as with any business process, you will need some form of collaboration to organize the varying tasks, people and technology, and the people and the technology components of this operation. So since this is new, there aren't any software packages to handle this. Think back to the days when before CRM packages existed or financial software packages existed. This is where we are today with drone ops. You have different parts of the organizations running this op on email and Excel. And believe it or not, some parts are also run on paper forms and paper certificates. So this is where we are in this industry. And imagine also having 25 drones and 100 or more people. Excel and email can get you only part of the way. You need something more robust and more of a system-oriented approach. The third challenge is that we live in a world fueled by data. The moment you introduce any new operation, you're going to be required to report on it. So this also needs to be, you need to have a centralized digital information system that can keep track of all the flight data and activities. And the last challenge, which is by no means the last challenge, but it ranks 4th from when drone leaders or drone program leaders try to set up their organization, is that companies and corporations protect themselves against risk by adopting internal corporate policies and procedures, which sometimes are more restrictive than the federal and government policies. So if any of you has worked with utility companies, you know what I mean. So the drone program leaders want to comply with these internal policies also, right? Which might be different for different agencies and different companies and across different industries. So these challenges, if they're not addressed, they will lead to more risk exposure and reduced cost effectiveness. So we built the drone flight management system to address these needs by providing a system that is always up to date with current regulations, compliant with corporate safety policies and procedures, has an automated workflow capability rich with data analytics and AI for drone ops, and helps you to remain compliant with your organizational safety policies and procedures. The Mobius Logic drone flight management system focuses on 3 core competencies. The first competency is in the airspace access and flight planning. This is the set of features of our software to help you schedule flights, schedule usage of drones and pilots in a safe and regulated fashion. The second competency is around efficient, low-risk flights. So this part ensures that all regulations are followed by every approved flight request, and that all safety and security policies are in effect before flying, during flying, and post-flight. So we also enable each agency or company to customize their own policies and procedures into our app and rely on national services like air maps to update the federal and local government regulations. And the third competency is that it's a complete system of record. It ensures that all your drone ops are tracked and auditable if an audit happens and in case of accidents and injuries. So it also allows you to remain compliant with FAA regulations that require you to keep logs of your flights and report incidents. So as I mentioned, the drone flight management system is all built on the Azure platform. So if you'll be enterprise level scale ready day one. You pay only for the size of the ops that you currently need, and you scale up and down the infrastructure as your drone ops scale up or down. We leverage all the end-to-end security capabilities in Azure, starting from things like identity management using Azure AD, role-based access control, Azure SSL certificates, data encryption at rest, and during transit, we're also FedRAMP ready. So basically, all the capabilities that TJ presented earlier today regarding zero trust, they carry over because we're on the Azure platform. And lastly, the app is already capable of addressing your business continuity and disaster recovery needs without you having to spend any additional infrastructure cost or replicate or shadow your app resources. This slide shows you the various Azure resources that make up the app. You will notice that we use platform-as-a-service resources and not infrastructure-as-service resources in Azure, which ensure lower cost of Azure consumption overall. The next few slides I'm going to show, they show the major, some screenshots of the major functionality of the app, because I don't have enough time to show a full demo. So I'll show you some of the major functionality through screenshots, and then I'll shift over to the real life demo. So this screenshot is the flight request form in which a business user or a pilot can initiate the request for a new mission. I want to draw the attention here to the integrated map feature that shows you all the notice to airmen and temporary flight restrictions, NOTAMs and TFRs, that these are how they're the acronyms. It shows you the NOTAMs and the TFRs in real time when you schedule your flight. The same map is available to you when you fly, so you're aware of the airspace regulations in real time. For those of you who just heard these are terms used by pilots for manned and unmanned aircraft to communicate the status of the airspace they're flying into. So several agencies put out NOTAMs and TFRs to block certain airspace for certain time durations. These agencies could be the FAA, the DoD, or the air traffic controllers. This map consolidates all of those into a single view for the pilot and the person approving the flight to ensure the flight area is clear during the mission. This screen and the one following it show you the ability to track and audit trace all the data that comes out of the flights. It allows you to create reports by mission type, by pilot or pilot department, by drone size or type, and anything you want to report on regarding your flight missions. And this screen lists all the drones in your organization authorized for flight and the mission capability of each drone. Some drones might be equipped with LiDAR, others with infrared sensors, others with pesticide sprayers. So selecting the right drone for the light mission becomes a matter of just searching this list and the inventory. You don't have to hunt through several Excel spreadsheets to find what type of drones you own as an organization. So this slide and the one following it, they show the integration capabilities of this app, of the flight management system, with your infrastructure or with your enterprise IT systems. For example, Active Directory integration for single sign-on capabilities, integration with other ERP modules that you might have, especially when you want to keep track of flight hours. If the pilots are vendors and they're not your own employees or your own personnel flying the drones. So it streamlines the billing process and the payment process for vendors. So now I'm going to jump into the demo screens so that you could basically take a look at what the capabilities are. I'm going to be signed in to this flight management system here. So this is a flight management system that we've implemented for UC Berkeley. They have about 100 acres of airspace that they fly research drones over. They call the drones here UAS, Unmanned Airspace System, aircraft system. So basically, you'll see a list of all the drones that I have access to. So I'm allowed to fly those 2 drones as part of my department. The drones are categorized by size, below 55 pounds and over 55 pounds, and they have a third category as well. Depending on the category of the size, different policies and procedures kick in. And when I submit a flight request, and different people need to approve my flight mission before it can actually happen. This list is also dynamically updated based on the maintenance of the drone. So if the battery needs to be recycled, or so the drone will not be available for my flight mission until the maintenance is completed. So this has a whole backend system integrated with the inventory management system. My flight request screen here shows the flights that I have submitted for review, my approved flights, and any rejected flights that I might have with the reasons for rejection. So let's start creating a new flight request. Sorry about this, keeps showing up. So you'll see from the flight request, you'll see the blocked calendar times where I cannot fly because of other people flying in that space. But let's pick something for next Monday. And you'll notice that when I open the flight request, it's going to go in and zoom in onto my location. Just happens to be that I'm in Washington right now, not where UC Berkeley is. And you'll notice directly on the map that all the flight restrictions around where I am are visible on the map. And because I'm in the DC area, there's this TFR here that's no longer temporary, but kind of permanent, that blocks all the airspace around Washington, DC. So I cannot fly any commercial drone in this space without proper permissions. And you'll also notice the overlaying of restrictions here. Those smaller circles here within that bigger circle are local jurisdiction or county level regulations that prevent flight. For this could be a public school or a hospital or a public playground where the county or the city has prevented commercial drone flights over those areas. So if I want to fly, I'll have to go all the way to Fairfax, I think. Yep. And then I've selected this park over here, or this area, which again, my administration or my drone program leader has kind of designated the areas where I could fly. So this is one of those areas that I could select for my flight. If I have permissions, I could draw my own areas and submit that for approval. But in this case, I'm going to be just selecting what's been given to me. And then I'm going to fill the rest of the form. The form is customizable based on the policies and procedures of this organization or this agency here. They require a visual observer to be present every time I'm flying, so I need to fill out the name of the visual observer. This could be selected from a list or just coded in this way. My drones are available to me here, and then I can select the time of that I want to fly, and then I submit and send this out. So this now shows as pending. You'll probably hear my phone come up with a text message because I'm an admin on this, so I'll receive a text message that the flight has been submitted, and then I'm going to log in as an admin and try to see what flights are there. So as an admin, I have access to all the drones in the organization, all the owners of the drones, and I can check them out, check them in here, put them into maintenance mode, and I can see all the flight requests that came in. This is the flight request that I just submitted, or I think, yep. And then I can approve this, and when it's approved, or I can reject it, and then now the user could fly, or the pilot could fly that mission at that time that's scheduled for flight. I'm going to continue the rest of the demo using some videos because it's not easy to demo drone stuff in a live stream situation. So having seen the FMS core capabilities in scheduling flights, the next videos will show you use cases implemented using the flight management system. So the first use case is for hotspot detection and forest fires using drones. This use case was requested by the Department of Interior. And we built in collaboration with a US-based drone manufacturer based in Seattle called Robodub. So the flight management system that we have scheduled for drones to go out and inspect the fire, it monitors the so our FMS will monitor the flight of the drones, and it will report back the location of the hotspot so that the control center could dispatch the emergency response people to that hotspot. Notice the drone on the lower right side, the green one, it's following its path based on what the flight management system approved, and then detects the hotspot using its onboard sensors, infrared sensors in this case, and then reports it back to the control center. And the second demo is also for UC Berkeley. In this case, they, as I mentioned, they manage this 100 acres of airspace, and they only want authorized flights over that airspace. So if you have not been pre-approved for a flight, they don't want you to fly. So our FMS monitors all the flight requests and all the drones. And if you try to take up a drone without an approved mission, it will bring it down. So this is, again, here, the flight management system sends a text message to the flight manager to approve or reject the flight. In this case, they're going to reject the flight the same way I kind of approved it previously. They're going to reject it. And then the pilot, regardless of that, they're going to take up with the drone. But then the flight manager receives another text message saying an unauthorized flight happened, and then they can bring it down the drone within the first few seconds of the flight. If the drone has been up in the air for more than a few seconds, there's a different process that goes down and notifies the pilot to stop the flight, as opposed to bringing out the flight from the system. So this is what I had for today. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions for me, let me know, or you can contact me for more information and for more elaborate demos. Thanks.
Thank you, Christian. That was great. Let's see, do we have, I'm not sure if we have any questions. I was just checking that out. But we can take questions at the end if people have questions that they haven't asked but they would like. For our next presentation, we have Toby Leigh from Leidos. She's going to talk about Azure Chatbot. So Leigh.
Okay, thanks, Karina.
All you. Yep.
Start down. Okay. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Okay.
Okay, so thanks again, Karina. My name is Toby Leigh. I actually work for Leidos. As you know, Leidos is one of the major integrators for a lot of the cloud IT services, specializing in aerospace and in defense. So I have a really cool job. I get to basically work with the Microsoft partnerships across all three CSPs. I myself specialize more in Microsoft Azure and in AI ML. So today what we're going to do is go through a scenario which we consistently have at Leidos with a lot of the government customers that we have, and also internally as consumers, where we have call centers and service centers that have over 5,000 to 10,000 users that basically consume the service. And basically we always look at ways we can automate and save on money. So we look at it as a cost savings, and we also look at how we can automate across the business and also fulfill our duty as providing that to our customers in the government space. So what I want to do is go through the cost and operations as a shared service, and then identify our basic use case that we had. And then what I'll do is go into the demo for the AI voice and chatbot. So the problem again that we faced as we ourselves are customers, and then also have call centers, or we also have customers in the government space that have call centers that either they may use their own internal tool for everything from password research to ServiceNow to NIST and InContact, and everyone's looking at ways that you can automate and also make customer service experience more efficient. So the specific problem we face as an integrator is that we have, of course, we offer cloud services, some as managed service, some as shared services, and we have service desks that sit internally and externally for our customers. So we always look at ways to improve what we do as a business with call centers for our customers, and then also we look to support again the federal customers that we have in our portfolio. So one of the ways we looked at solving that is, of course, through AI, specifically through chatbots. So as we know, it's a bunch of different CSPs that offer AI and ML. They offer chatbots as well. And so what we did is we looked at ways to specifically around that technology and some of the CSPs and what they offered, including having virtual assistants that can tie into other services, again, like NICE and InContact, and then also ServiceNow, and then provide common services, so password resets, all your high volume calls, which you can basically poll either through recordings, or you can poll through your ITIL management. So different ways that you can basically look at a lot of those call centers, and as you look at basically IT management for your ticketing system, We looked across the board. We basically took all our large volume calls that we had that were ticket requests, and we looked to automate a lot of that with the chatbot. And then, of course, promote that through more of a self-service and automation template. And then also, as we learn, when those tickets are open and the transition to either a virtual assistant or a live person, build on the knowledge management that we provided. So our basic use case, again, the technical approach we took was to integrate the new AI technologies into an existing service for our service center and call center offerings, and essentially improve productivity of the customer service agents and provide those chatbots as virtual assistants. The capability statement basically was to develop that AI technical solution and then integrate that across the board to reduce the number of customer transactions that require real-time customer service agents by 20%. That was our starting mark. And then we looked at, of course, us being a government integrator, which services are actually provided as a FedRAMP solution. And we saw that Microsoft was one of the few that actually were. And then also had a mature platform for AI and ML. So the Microsoft Azure chatbot is available in the FedRAMP environment. Microsoft has a well-established bot framework. One of the things we looked at, with those pluses was, yeah, they have that established bot framework. We know that really it just requires some data and some expertise in that space, but we quickly, geared our actual environment and actually our SMEs around that technology, around AI and ML, to quickly get up to speed with Azure Chatbot. So some of the other vendors that offer some of the same AI ML capabilities are like Smart Action. We have Google that also has a place in the Gov space. So we were able to test all of those different CSPs across the board, everything from transcription from the bot to voice. We noticed that some capabilities weren't fully functional in the FedRAMP space, but we also knew that, this being a new technology, we know that Microsoft has tried and true on their framework, and we were able to compare against all three. And we also saw that basically, on the storage side, you could also secure that data that you place within Azure. So we knew that they had a fully functional platform, and that the employee basically on the language side, meaning that they speak, several different languages, Spanish, Portuguese. We know that those were actually capable for the AI voice and chatbot for Azure. Then we basically came up with a high-level plan to procure the service on that platform, develop it, implement it, and then pilot. So we developed our methodology based on that performance, and then based on the feedback that we got from our test unit, from a customer satisfaction standpoint. And then we looked at the security and how basically you use Visual Studio, you can use .NET, you can use various different other platforms, and then you can actually develop on that all without trying to hard code. A lot of it's performed either in deployment slots or through keys, actually. So now I'm gonna go into the actual demo portion of the presentation. So to create a bot is pretty straightforward. What Microsoft has done is made the web app bot itself available through the marketplace. So you simply hit create. I already have a resource group created. I'm out of the East, out of the DC area. So one thing to also keep in mind is to keep, as far as your resources and performance goes, especially since the bot is handling a lot of transactions and a lot of the dialogue flow between services, it's always best to keep those in the same region where possible. Microsoft also offers 2 different templates. Node.js is another really popular language that you can actually code on. For the demonstration, I'm going to actually go with the Echo bot. Another cool feature is that you can actually add your application and insights. That'll give you some preference around, the call volume, the users. They give you some actually, some basically insight on basically how many people are actually consuming that service, and give you the analytics that you can actually report on afterwards. So as that service is actually deploying, I will go back to a bot just to expedite that's been deployed using that same template. And once deployed, it actually pulls up a web chat, which in the web chat, you could use this to basically test any of your code. A lot of the code that is used in the background just off default is either created through Q&A Maker or basically coded through Visual Studio. So another cool thing about it is that you can test it right after deployment. And with this specific bot, we are using a Q&A cognitive service that has a knowledge base. This actual knowledge base has a lot of the questions and answers directly posed from our call centers and service centers. So we have a lot of either password resets. We have, either with software deployments of company software itself. We have token requests. We also have just standard, again, password and ID questions and answers that need to be either called or basically can be requested. So the Q&A actually gives you your KB that you can actually save and train. And this is how you basically get your input from your KB to actually see how it's functioning and if it's actually taking the right request. So as you see here, I requested a password reset. It asked me what my employee name ID was, and I basically put a simple 1, 2, 3, 4, and it should confirm that. One of the other cool aspects is that you could actually tie this with your ticketing system, which is ServiceNow, and it'll actually do a virtual assistant handoff, or it'll actually open up a ticket, which is what we essentially did for some of our customers and internally. So going back to the bot, so that is a simple demonstration of just the standard Echo bot with a knowledge base, but we also have the capability to tie different channels into the bot. So you have the capability now, as of 2 months ago, Microsoft has moved towards telephony features, which basically now give you the capability, like a lot of the other CSPs, to be able to call the bot directly. This is something that's in preview currently. Microsoft will be publishing this, I believe, in May at the Microsoft Ignite. So you'll be able to get your hands on it then, but it allows you essentially to call your bot along with all the capabilities with Q&A and Lewis for language understanding. So it puts a voice with that bot that you have, and it also does the cognitive services behind it with your Q&A knowledge base, which is very cool. So so if you wanted to go to Teams and basically do a handoff, you could essentially do that. With this demo, I actually have a ServiceNow virtual assistant that is not fully set up just for demo purposes, but basically it does a virtual agent handoff, which is really cool. So basically if you had a Q&A with the transcription behind it to actually do a handoff to create a ticket, that's one of the things that you could do. You can also essentially add other services and channels to this. So email. You have the capability of adding an email request. So basically you can answer those replies through the bot directly to email. Of course, you have GroupMe, you have Skype, Slack, and others that basically make this bot very versatile. So it will address a lot of the business needs and cadence that you have throughout the enterprise. And the most unique thing about it, again, is that a lot of those services that are offered are already FedRAMP. So it gives you that capability to actually build a solution that you know will be sitting in Azure GovCloud, which is great. So the next part of the demo, I actually go through and go from my standard bot to the bot with Microsoft's new bot framework IVR, which again builds the capability for you to actually have a phone number. And for the demonstration, I've actually went in and pre-populate some of the features in here just to speed it up. But as you see, I had my knowledge base from Q&A that I've tested and trained, and that knowledge base is now tied to my bot. So I'm going to do a quick test and sure the bot is functioning properly. So we know it is. So we know it's functioning. It has a full knowledge base, not only that includes a personality for the bot, because you do have different ways to actually code the different types of personalities for the bot. For my demo, I actually chose a professional service for my bot, and which allows me to basically have a professional gesture when replying back. And so now that we've actually tested it, we know that our Q&A knowledge base is tied to our bot. We can then, if we wanted to actually call the bot to see if it replies back. So let's give the bot a quick call. Again, going through the IVR solution, what you have options to do is either tie that to Teams or actually, again, create that phone number for those handoffs directly to the Azure bot. What we did is pre-populated the phone numbers. If you see here, you bind that phone number, which is our bot is listed here as an active voice user. You see the phone numbers actually bind to that bot within the Azure portal, so that I can basically go back and look at the actual channel. And it's not hard-coded. It's all using the cognitive service that's within Azure with a service key, so that basically you don't disclose any information that's not needed. It makes it very secure. And now I will give the bot a call just to verify the name. We know it's the Q&A bot. We can go back into our voice portion of the cloud and then basically go to Skype, and we see that we have a 202 Virginia number and another 202, and we know that's aligned to the Q&A bot. Just to verify, I'll go back in my channels and actually show. Here is the number, and I will call the bot.
Hello and welcome.
And as you see, now the bot actually can be called, and along with basically doing the cognitive services around not only speech, but transcription. So not only does it answer that knowledge base, but it also will return that message. So which makes it very intuitive, very smart. That knowledge base that you build can either be moved to other knowledge bases or shared across a development team, or you could simply also add audio files. So in our special case, we actually added quite a bit of audio from those call centers just to track and transcribe to give us that, full featured KB to answer a lot of those requests that we have that are coming in through service centers and call centers. So, which made it really, really cool, really, really dynamic, really easy to stand up. You do have to have, again, some knowledge of Visual Studio, and then also be pretty familiar with Azure. But other than that, it's really quick to get up to speed on. And if you wanted to develop and add more code to your bot, it's pretty simple to do. I can actually go through how that's actually done within Azure. So I can go back to my demo bot, and I can go back to the build management, and I can actually download that source code to Visual Studio to do my main edits and then republish that. So as you see here, I've downloaded it. Let's see. I've downloaded my code directly from Azure, unzip the file. Can now bring it back up in Visual Studio. Make my edit changes, rebuild, and publish that directly to Azure. Of course, I have multi-factor authentication, which is always great. And I'm also using the Microsoft Authenticator app to approve it on my phone. I've approved it on my phone. Let's just cancel it.
And just quickly, for a time check, we're at 8:08.
Okay. Yep. Maybe because it's we get the idea. So basically, you can publish directly from Visual Studio, and then once that's republished to that resource group, that can then be, again, you can basically go back and either work off the code, and then also see the changes within within Azure. So you get a activity log of basically that gives you any type of changes that you've made here for the bot and that have been republished. They're in your activity log, so you can basically see if any other developers are developing and doing updates and pushing that code. You can basically assign that through Azure AD, or you could simply assign it and do a project share through Visual Studio. that does conclude my presentation for Azure Bots. I'm happy to field any kind of questions that you have. I actually left both links from directly from what the bot service is and the framework, and then the GitHub IVR bot framework that you can actually check out and preview a lot of those changes that Microsoft's had and made with the Azure bot. Thanks.
Thank you, Toby. That was great. I really want to, again, thank all the speakers for their contributions today. And thank for everyone who's attending our virtual meetup. We have the next one coming up next month, April 29th. And you can RSVP on our meetup platform, meetup.com/DC Azure Gov. Again, if you want to volunteer your time, or you know a customer who'd love to share their story on modernization, that's the topic we'll cover next month. So with that, thank you all for joining. We'll have this recorded and posted. In the meantime, if you have any questions or would like to volunteer, please reach out. Thank you so much.